Starting May 4th, Pokemon Go is kicking off the Luminous Legends X event in Pokemon Go. Luminous Legends X is in honor of Xerneas there, the X Pokemon from Pokemon X and Y, a big fairy-type Pokemon. And with this event, we are going to be seeing some more fairy-type spawns in the wild. On top of that, we are having the debut of Aromatisse and Slurpuff, two fairy-type Pokemon. We're also getting Goodra, a mono-type dragon Pokemon that's kind of goofy looking. I can see it, vibing with the fairy theme. And if we do have, I think it's 500 million fairy catches over the duration of the event, we will have the global unlock for Pangoro, which is a fighting dark-type Pokemon. So all four of these Pokemon do look pretty interesting for PvP, so I decided to throw together a quick analysis video to let you guys know just how good these guys are in PvP. If you're curious how good they are in raids, they're not. They're not good in raids, but they are pretty interesting for PvP, so they got that going on. By the way, if you are interested in a Xerneas and Yveltal analysis video, that will be in a future video. Basically, I want to spend a little bit more time going over their matchup data so I could make a more detailed video on those Pokemon for you guys. So subscribe for that if you're interested in learning more about those two Pokemon. Two Pokemon that could also be good in raids, unlike these Pokemon. So yeah, make sure to subscribe for that. Before we get into the details here, on GamePress there is a nice article that covers the Luminous Legends X event, and it does have some nice light information about the meta viability of all these new Pokemon in the game. So if you do want to reference any of this, or if you want some more information on the event itself, well then make sure to check out this article on GamePress, link in the description. So the first Pokemon I want to talk about here is Goodra. Goodra is a mono dragon type Pokemon, and if you want to get a Goodra, you just can't evolve your Sliggoo. It doesn't work out that way. You have to be in the presence of a rainy lure module. Not in front of like a lure when it's raining outside. You have to use a special like rainy lure module to make that happen. So you know how we got like the ice lure module, we got the mossy lure module, we got the magnetized one. Well, we are getting a rainy one in the game now that, attracts a certain breed of Pokemon, and you can evolve Goodra in the presence of that module. So that's how you get this guy. And as far as the stat line goes on it, it's pretty decent. It's got some pretty good bulk. The attack stat is a little bit high, which is kind of painful for the Great League and the Ultra League, but it's not all that bad. It's pretty good, and it does end up having some pretty decent bulk for both the Great League and in the Ultra League. When it comes to the moveset department, we got Water Gun, which does not matter at all, and we have Dragon Breath, which is phenomenal. A Dragon-type Pokemon with Dragon Breath. Is there a better pairing in the world for any Dragon Pokemon? So that's pretty good. Dragon Breath spamming Pokemon, the only way it can get even better is if it has pretty good charge moves. And when it comes to the charge moves, Draco Meteor, not bad. Pretty heavy nuke damage, especially on a thicker Pokemon. You might actually be able to reach it. Sludge Wave is some interesting anti-fairy coverage, but a relatively poor attack all in all. Like, this is the attack that you want to pair with a low energy cost charge move, not like a big one like Draco Meteor. And then we got Muddy Water. 35 energy cost, only 35 base damage, so it is a pretty poor attack overall. It has a 30% chance to decrease your opponent's attack stack by one stage, so that is decent, but it's not great, right? And then for the final charge move here, we have Power Whip, which is interesting. Like, if it had a lower energy cost, that'd be even better for Goodra, but it doesn't. But it is interesting, because with this grass-type coverage, you do have a reliable way to punish an Azumarill. Like, you can threaten Azumarill, and in some cases, you can even beat Azumarill if you are able to land the Power Whip. And because Power Whip has a 50 energy cost, Sludge Wave having, I think, 55 or 60, I'm pretty sure it's 60, yeah, Power Whip is going to come out a lot faster for a anti-fairy kind of coverage. I guess in this case, anti-Azumarill type coverage. So I'd say it's definitely a lot more of a reliable move than what Sludge Wave is. So with all that in mind, what moveset is going to be the moveset for Goodra? Well, we definitely want to have Power Whip, because the main reason why you'd really want to use like a Goodra instead of literally any other Dragon Breath Pokemon would be to have that coverage against Azumarill. So Power Whip, kind of definitely want to have it. So then are we pairing Muddy Water with the Power Whip? Well, I went over a bunch of simulations in both the Great League and the Ultra League looking at the matchup data specifically, and even when Goodra is at a shield advantage against an opponent, it really wants to have that little bitty extra damage from the Muddy Water to close out a lot of its fights. It's just like the consistency booster, that low energy cost so you can actually close out a fight. Even though Muddy Water doesn't have a lot of closing power, it's just like that little extra nudge. So the only time I could really see not using Muddy Water being beneficial is if your opponent like expects you to have Muddy Water and they think it's the bait, so they let your move through, and then your move is like actually like Draco Meteor. And that's the only time I could really think of you not wanting to use Muddy Water. But more often than not, if you're trying to play the odds here, you're trying to have a consistent Pokemon to get you wins in PvP, you're probably going to want to go for the Muddy Water, which is pretty awkward. So with this all in mind, just how good is Goodra in PvP? Well, when it comes to the Great League, its stat line is pretty analogous to the Dragonair. And we don't really see a whole lot of Dragonair, do we? Like, it's not a bad Pokemon for PvP. We know it's a very okay Pokemon, but we don't see a lot of Dragonair. And part of that may be because Dragonair doesn't have Power Whip to hit back against Azumarill, but another part of it might just be because Altaria is a better Dragon Breath user overall, and we're still having a losing matchup against Bastiodon, so why are we using anything aside from Altaria? Goodra here does have an argument to use this instead of Altaria in the fact that it has Power Whip to hit back against Azumarill, but the Power Whip is only truly helping out a lot against that Azumarill matchup. Aside from that, it is kind of a worse Altaria. And then also, aside from Power Whip against the Azumarill, it is kind of a worse Dragonair. So overall, it's a good Pokemon. It's a spicy Pokemon. It can get wins in PvP in the Great League. It's not bad, but I wouldn't be too excited for this Pokemon. Now, if you are interested in using Goodra in the Great League, there are some breakpoints that you may want to be aware of to boost your consistency with it. Like if you're going to evolve a Goodra and maybe use it in the Great League, you may as well make sure it's got the right IVs, right? And first thing that you're definitely going to want to pay attention to is a defense stat. You're going to want to have at least a 133.85 defense stat that should help you avoid the counter breakpoint from Deoxys Defense Form, boosting your consistency in fighting Deoxys Defense Form, because all that counter damage, doing one less damage, that's clearly a pretty big thing. Then the second thing you're going to pay attention to with the Goodra here is having a 119.6 or higher attack stat. And that is low enough that you can juggle the defense and still have decent HP, so you don't have to worry about completely gimping your Goodra in order to reach this 119.6 attack stat. So yeah, pretty good one to pay attention to. It can get you a breakpoint against XL Sableye. It won't get you it against the like rank 1 XL Sableye, but if you consider that XL Sableyes are probably going to be purified, right? Against the purified IVs, you have a really good opportunity of hitting a breakpoint on them, allowing you to better overcome that matchup. And then another Pokemon that you do get a breakpoint on with the 119.6 or higher attack stat is Venusaur. Now you do already beat Venusaur, you are a dragon type Pokemon, but you know, clipping Venusaur from getting a second charge move in that fight, that could be pretty big. You know, not eating a big charge move from Venusaur, be it resisted or not, it's a pretty big consistency maker there. So, you know, you got the maybe breakpoint against the XL Sableye, and then you've got the definitely breakpoint against Venusaur, a matchup that you already win, but now you can dominate even harder. Sounds pretty good. You also do have the potential to get a breakpoint against a Drifblim as well, but it would have to be a relatively low rank Drifblim in order to get that breakpoint at like 119.5 or 119.6. So it's a maybe breakpoint there, but you know, 119.6 or higher attack stat, and then make sure you got the 133.85 defense stat, and that right there should be the Goodra. That said, it's still not that great in the Great League. It's an okay Pokemon, interesting spice Pokemon, but definitely not big meta crazy boy, right? Then when it comes to the Ultra League, I was looking at the matchup data, and it was doing some interesting things. It wasn't like big, but it was doing some interesting stuff. And then I realized that every like little cool interesting thing it was doing is something that Kingdra already does. And Kingdra just does it way better. And Kingdra also beats Goodra. So I don't really see a whole big reason to use Goodra in the Ultra League or the Premier Cup Ultra League when, you know, Kingdra already exists. You want to talk about Muddy Water, 30% chance to drop the attack stat by one stage? Kingdra's got Oxzuka, man. 50% chance to drop the attack stat by 2 stages. you know? And then, yeah, Kingdra does have the water defensive typing. It's not a pure mono-type dragon, but even that doesn't really matter. So at the end of the day, it's not a bad Pokemon for the Ultra League, but I'd probably much rather be using Kingdra there. Next up on our list are the Fairy-type Pokemon Aromatisse and Slurpuff. Fairy-type Pokemon. What new fast moves could they be bringing to spice up the metagame in Pokemon Go? Well, with Aromatisse, we have Charm and Charge Beam. And then Slurpluff here has Charm and Tackle. So Fairy-type Pokemon using Charm. That's actually pretty new, right? We don't have anything else doing that in the Great League at all, do we, guys? Yeah. So how are these Fairy-type Pokemon with Charm standing out among all the other Charm users that we already have in the game? Well, when it comes to their stat lines, they're very similar to each other in their overall stat product. 119.6, 119.57. And then if you look at Clefable is also basically there too. 1946, so very similar stat line to Clefable, the other mono fairy type Pokemon. So the only way these Pokemon are really standing out is with their charge moves. So when it comes to the charge move department, Aromatisse has Moonblast, Psychic, Draining Kiss. We've seen this stuff before, but it also has Thunderbolt, and that is like a little bit new, a little bit spicy, a little neutral damage for a lot of things, super effective damage for flyers and water type Pokemon. So Thunderbolt, kind of welcome. And then when it comes to Slurpluff, we have Energy Ball and Flamethrower. Now, unlike Whimsicott, we don't have a same type attack bonus on the Energy Ball, so Energy Ball is feeling like a little bit of a weaker option on Slurpluff. But if you don't want to have the Grass type weaknesses and you want to run Grass type coverage on your Charm user, Slurpluff is the option for that. And then when it comes to Flamethrower, we already do have Flamethrower on Togekiss, but Togekiss is a little bit more fragile than what Slurpluff is, and Togekiss does have the Flying subtype, which can help it out in some matchups, and it can hurt it in other matchups. So if you do want a Flamethrower, Blast, and Togekiss type Pokemon, but you don't want it to be a fragile Flying type Pokemon, Slurpluff is an option for that. In my opinion, when it comes to the Slurpluff, I definitely want to stick with the Flamethrower, so you'd have some coverage against the Steel-type Pokemon that may wall you, and then some coverage against the Venusaur as well. And then instead of Energy Ball, I'd probably go with Play Rough, just so you'd have like that heavy, same type attack bonus, just solid Fairy-type attack, because at the end of the day, like whatever Energy Ball is going to be hitting, Play Rough is probably also going to be hitting as well. As so long as Flamethrower already isn't doing super effective damage, you kind of get where I'm coming from here. So yeah, I'd probably go with this moveset on the Slurpluff. At any rate, these two Pokemon are pretty good. They're obviously not bad. They're as good as Clefable is in the Great League, but they don't really stand out all that much aside from their unique charge moves. So they're not bad. New Charm users, as good as any other Charm. Unique charge moves, but does this really matter? I'll leave that up to you to decide, because obviously if you're making a team that has Charm users and you're like, man, I sure do wish this Charm user had an electric type attack or a fire type attack, well then obviously that can, tip the scales for you there. Then when it comes to the Ultra League, as far as being a Charm user goes in the Ultra League, having a fire type hit or a neutral hit to work against the Registeel, that is pretty nice, and G-Fisk is starting to pop up here in the Ultra League as well, so having a fire type hit for the G-Fisk, that's also pretty good. So I see there being some good mileage on the Slurpluff. Not having the flying type weaknesses as well, that's also pretty good, comparison to the Togekiss there. So Slurpluff does kind of have it going on a bit. Aromatisse in the Ultra League has a higher stat product than the Slurpluff, but I don't really see the Thunderbolt and Psychic really helping it out all that much. And at this point, I'd probably much rather use the Clefable for a secondary Charmer, despite having the, the better stat product. And then between them, yeah, they are both also XL candidates. So if you are looking at using them in the Ultra League, I expect to be catching a ton of them so you can get all that XL candy, and expect to put in some heavy Stardust to actually use them. Are they worth it? Slurpluff is a good maybe. But given the extensive cost of Slurpluff, you might be better off just going with Togekiss for a Flamethrower Charm user. But Slurpluff is an option, and it is a little bit more tanky than the Togekiss is, so that could work out. But ultimately, I feel like Togekiss might be a little bit better here. But Once again, more charm users, nearly hit the 2,500 when maxed out, so obviously they can't be all that bad. At the end of the day, you're going to be comparing them to Clefable though, because they do have very similar stats to Clefable. Clefable is also a XL candidate type Pokemon, so what do these guys have over Clefable? Thunderbolts and Flamethrower. That's what they have. Is that really putting them above Clefable? It really comes down to your team and what you expect to see in the meta. So 2 not bad Pokemon, but ultimately, like, they're nothing new. They're nothing that we really haven't seen before, so it's up to you to decide how much you really want to use them. And since we're on the topic of charm users, yeah, why not talk about Sylveon, right? Sylveon also has similar stat products to the Slurpuff and the Aromatisse and the Clefable, but for the Ultra League, Sylveon doesn't have to be XL'd to get that level of stat product. So when Sylveon does come out in the future, we do expect it to come out in the near future, Sylveon's looking pretty good as a charm user. Big problem that Sylveon has, though, as a charm user, is its move pool. All it has is fairy type attacks. And of course we could get the last resort sometime in the future as well, which is a normal type attack. But you know, normal type attack, 55 energy cost for some okay neutral normal type damage. At that point, I feel like I'd much rather be using a Clefable with a 55 energy cost Meteor Mash, one of the more powerful charge moves in the entire game. So Sylveon's looking good. It's looking like a good budget option for the Ultra League, but it doesn't really stand out compared to the other charm users aside from being a little bit more budget. And it also has this same kind of thing going on in the Great League as well. Obviously, it's not as hard to power up the other charm users in the Great League because it's the Great League. And then the problem that Sylveon's going to come down to at the end of the day is going to be the last resort having relatively poor damage and poor coverage compared to the other coverage options that other fairy type charge move have in Pokemon are going to have. So Sylveon a little bit awkward. Maybe it could get like a different fast move, like Fairy Wind could come out and be like an energy gaining fast move for fairy type Pokemon. That's pretty good. We're hoping that that is something that might happen and will happen for Sylveon. We're hoping that that'll happen, and that could make Sylveon stand out a bit. But as it currently stands as a charm user, Sylveon's not looking all that interesting. I mean, it's cute, but it's not all that interesting. Then finally, we got this guy, Pangoro, the global unlock Pokemon. If we catch 500 million fairy type Pokemon collectively, we can unlock this guy, a dark fighting type Pokemon. Now, its stat line isn't anything to really write home about. It's not exactly a tanky Pokemon for the Great League or the Ultra League, but it does have that dark subtyping, which is really nice, giving it good resistance to dark and ghost type attacks, and psychic type attacks as well, so definitely a solid Pokemon. So think about Scrafty, right? Scrafty doesn't have the most stellar stat line in the universe either, but it's also a really good Pokemon in Great League and Ultra League PvP. So, what moves does Pangoro have? And we got Low Kick, Snarl, and Bullet Punch. So Low Kick and Bullet Punch are both pretty poor moves. Low Kick, as I said in the Meloetta video, Low Kick deserves a buff. We are waiting for a Low Kick buff. We don't have a Low Kick buff right now, so until a Low Kick buff happens, the only real fast move that Pangoro has is Snarl. And Snarl isn't a bad fast move. It has good energy gains, it's a dark type attack, so you get the same type attack bonus on the Snarl because you're a dark type Pokemon, so, you know, can't be all that bad. But we are lacking here is the counter. Counter for that heavy fighting type damage and good energy gains, so we are lacking that compared to competing Pokemon in the similar role, such as Scrafty and the Obstagoon. Obstagoon isn't a fighting type Pokemon, but basically operates in the same sort of field that these fighting darks do. So what do we got for the charge moves? Well, we got Close Combat, which is a nice nuke type charge move. We got Night Slash, which can always give you the boost, and it has low energy cost for the bait there, so that's also really good. We got Iron Head, and Iron Head can technically give us coverage against fairy type Pokemon, but you know, we're dark fighting. So the fairy types are going to beat us so quick anyways, I don't really see this mattering too much, but it could pack a surprise for some fairy type Pokemon. And then finally we got Rock Slide. And Rock Slide has some pretty nice coverage, hits flyers super effectively, but you know, we got Fighting in Dark with the same type attack bonuses. So how much uses are going to be for Rock Slide realistically? You know? Well, looking at the simulation data, it seems like Rock Slide may be the preferred secondary charge move to pair with the Close Combat. Now, Close Combat and Night Slash, dark and fighting type attacks have really good synergy with each other. They have really good neutral coverage against everything that's not a fairy type Pokemon. So aside from fairy types, you are hitting basically everything with Night Slash and Close Combat. However, the Night Slash isn't hitting all that hard, and Night Slash isn't all that great when paired with Snarl. I mean, think about Scrafty. Scrafty would never really want to pair its Power-Up Punch with Snarl because the Power-Up Punch, the damage boost, doesn't really do a whole heck of a lot for Snarl. If Snarl was, Shadow Claw, for instance, then Night Slash plus, Shadow Claw, that would be pretty good. We see that with Zangoose. Zangoose makes some pretty good use out of it, but Snarl just isn't hitting hard enough, and it doesn't have enough frequency to really make good use out of the Night Slash. And you could be thinking, if it had, Shadow Claw, that doesn't have the same type attack bonus, so, Snarl clearly must be the better attack. And I looked it up on PvPoke, and yeah, Shadow Claw has the same energy gains as Snarl, and it does better damage, even without having the same type attack bonus. So it's just kind of awkward to pair that with that. So as a Snarl using Pokemon, looking at the matchup data on PvPoke in both the Great League and in the Ultra League, it seems like Rock Slide might be the preferred secondary charge move to pair with the Close Combat. And then obviously we definitely want to have the Close Combat because that is the big nuke damage coming off of this thing. We don't have good fast move damage to deal onto stuff, so we really do need to rely on our charge move damage to get a lot of our jobs done. So Close Combat definitely needs to happen. So Pangoro, it's not a bad Pokemon, it's pretty decent in PvP, but I'd definitely put it a step below those other Pokemon. And if you were to use it, I'd probably look more towards the Rock Slide to get some interesting stuff in with it, barring us getting like a low kick buff in the future. So to give you guys a brief summary on these Pokemon, once again, Goodra, not bad in the Great League. It's kind of a worse Dragonair, but it does have a way to hit against Azumarill, so that may be the niche reason why you want to use it. Overall, not a bad Pokemon, but definitely not a great must-have meta Pokemon. Then when it comes to Aromatisse and Slurpuff, they're both relatively as good as Clefable is, similar with the future Sylveon, all relatively as good as Clefable is, so it's their unique move sets, their unique charge moves, being Thunderbolt for Aromatisse and then Flamethrower for the Slurpuff, that will allow them to kind of stand out from Clefable. So at the end of the day, however you feel about Clefable, I'd say that's kind of roughly how you should feel about these guys. And then they also got unique charge moves compared to Clefable. And then finally, when it comes to Pangoro, Pangoro is the Fighting Dark type Pokemon, so it's doing Fighting Dark type stuff. We already see that with Scrafty, with Zangoose, with the Obstagoon there. So all three of those Pokemon do have ways of standing out compared to each other, and Pangoro also stands out as well. It has Rock Slide. And I think that's the main way Pangoro is going to stand out to those Pokemon. So if you want that type of role filled, but you also want them to have rock type coverage so they can hit flying type Pokemon just a little bit harder, well then Pangoro is going to be your ticket for that. But if you are looking for pure fighting and dark type stuff to happen, I think Scrafty, Obstagoon, Zangoose, I think those guys are going to come forward first before the Pangoro. But hey, Flyers man, Pangoro, it's got you at that Rock Slide, so watch out. At any rate, that's all I gotta say about these guys. If you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this content, you want to see more like it, well make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you want to support the Swag Man on Patreon, link in the description.